Hey guys, welcome back. Tisha here to discuss this mind-blowing episode of Where is Wendy Williams. Keep this in mind, I'm not going to be doing a play-by-play for this because it was all over the place, number one. And number two, I think if you have Lifetime that you should watch this. I strongly encourage it because it's just something to see it for yourself. It's one thing for you to tell like what you see, for me to sit up here and tell you guys some of what I see, and another thing for you to observe it. But after watching this, I'm extremely disturbed. It has been said that Wendy has made between $50,000 to $55,000 an episode, which means at one point they estimated that her net worth was over $20 million. But here we have Wendy Williams telling us that she's broke. She is in a position where she cannot even access her money, currently surrounded by leeches, scumbags, and opportunists, and I hate it for her. To see us go from the person who's known for the "how you doing" to what we see now, it's just disturbing. I want to know what is wrong with her family, that no one could be trusted to make sure that she's okay. Are they leeches too? Because something isn't adding up. How does it get to a point where you don't even utilize a guardian from the family, someone who is related to her or knows her, and you have a court appoint one? So the show starts with a message that says, in May 2022, Wendy Williams was placed under a financial guardianship by the Supreme Court of New York. I'm going to have to look more into it because I saw some comments, which I'll read one at the end that I saw in regards to this, but I don't understand how this works. It's a sealed case and they'll conduct a review of the guardianship every year. So you did it. That's it, which I feel like some steps are missing here. So here we are filming in August of 2022 to see what is supposed to be the beginning of a career comeback. Now, that alone doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand how at this point when they're filming this woman is supposed to have a career comeback when she is walking out barefoot with discolored feet from the damage that has been caused from the lymphedema in her feet. But she walks out, hops into that big pink chair that we're accustomed to her seeing, and she looks like a shell of herself. I feel myself getting emotional already. Doggone, I'm not trying to. We see all these different clips of her, and a clip of her saying that Wells Fargo has this petition that is keeping her away from her money. So she's talking to the producer, and it's obvious that something is off. When you make a statement to the producer that you're glad that you're free from the Wendy Williams show because now you can show your boobs, and then you ask said producer if they like to see them and proceed to pull your top down to show them, it shows that something's off. We know that Wendy has always loved her assets, but to see her doing it and to see how she looks like something is wrong. So they show Will Shelby, who in my mind is no good. You all who've watched it, let me know what you think. Also, let me know what you think based on what I'm telling you, because Will Shelby is Wendy's manager and another opportunist, if you ask me. I don't understand how you go from hanging out with her in the night scene to commissioning jewelry for her to then becoming a friend to, after her divorce, becoming a manager. He's supposedly, according to him, there to help her clean up her image, to get back to the Wendy that we've grown to love, as he allows her to sit there and vape and drink with a plethora of medications that she's taking, because at one point we see the pill container and it is full of medication. You want to manage something, manage to find out how to get Wendy connected with people who are actually going to look after her and make sure that she's taken care of. I understand that Wendy is an adult and there's only so much that you can get her to do, but enabling her isn't helping her either. Now, some of you may disagree with me, but if the lady struggles to walk at times and she's supposedly broke, how is she managing to get this alcohol? Who is bringing it to her? She says Will is her sexy best friend for life, and she begins to start crying. While she's over there getting emotional about it, and it's obvious something else is going on, he's over there smirking. I do not trust him. We find out that Wendy lost her mother, her show, and her husband all within a short period of time. And to me, that had to help with some of these health issues that she had, because she already had some underlying health issues, but the stress and the sorrow and all of this that was on her didn't help her situation. So anyways, since the age of 6, Wendy wanted to be the center of attention. In her own words, she didn't want wealth. What she wanted was fame. But right now, she doesn't even have wealth because, in her words, 3 doctors and a judge says her money is stuck in Wells Fargo. So now she has no money. So if Wendy has no money, how is she paying all these people that we currently see around her? And I'm not talking about the production team that's there to film her. I'm talking about how is she paying this manager? How is she paying all the photographers that we see that's there to help launch her next level of her career for this podcast? Should she not be drinking when she immediately I can't even talk. When she admittedly knows that, she's had substance abuse problems before and she loves vodka. We get told things like she loves her sister Wanda, but they don't get along because she hates that Wendy loves alcohol. We find out that Wendy checked into a wellness center for 2 months and they stopped filming at that point, right? And at that point, she looked really, really bad. So we come back 2 months later. She looks a little bit more put together, but it's so uncomfortable watching this woman who is no longer there. To me, her eyes are vacant. And I understand that certain things happen with dementia, but I don't think that all of this is dementia related. I feel like they're giving her a cocktail of things that make it so that she has less time of being herself and more times of fog. So she's sitting there and she's saying that basically she had gotten forced to go to a wellness center by the manager and her guardian. And they're saying that she can resume filming now. I'm so uncomfortable, y'all, watching her. Her eyes are scary. Like, I can't even do it. It's so crazy. They're open so wide to the point where she says some of it's Graves related. I can't speak to that. I have a cousin who has Graves disease, and at times it does affect the appearance of her eyes, but this looks like something different to me. And I could be wrong because I understand that it looks different in different people. It's just something isn't right here. They show a clip of her saying that her sister hates that she drinks alcohol. The last clip that they had with her. And as she's watching this clip, she's looking at it on an iPad. And you see her begin to cry. Like the tears are running down her face. So producers are asking her about the tears, and she says, it's tears of joy. But I don't see joy in her tears. I see sorrow. She says that the only thing that's bothering her about this clip is the wigs and the wardrobe. She doesn't really care for some of the wigs and some of the wardrobe. And I'm looking like, that's all you're getting out of this, is that you don't like the wigs and you don't like the wardrobe. Not the fact that you just said that your sister doesn't like that you drink. She didn't even address that part. So we find out she has a guardian and she has a healthcare advocate. And neither one of them are willing to answer questions about Wendy's health. And I feel like that's because the guardian and the health advocate are probably benefiting from this too. I don't know how, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're tapping into that money too, because all of these people aren't around her for free. Who's paying for it? So Will and the guardian took her to the center even though she didn't want to go. And as she's talking about it, she's getting mad and she says, you know what? I don't want to talk about it anymore. And she flicks up the bird. And when she did it, I chuckled. And then I had to check myself. And I had to say, Tisha, this isn't funny. I'm trying to be respectful of my family and not divulge too much, because some of my family is real funny about the whole social media thing. But I'll say this. I have a family member that had dementia and they've since passed from it. And different people get different levels to it. Some people say, oh, so-and-so is nice and they remain nice the whole time. My family member was one of the nicest, sweetest people that I know. I loved her immensely. And the disease turned her into someone completely different. The frontal lobe of the brain is damaged. And that's the area where the brain filters what comes out. So that is why sometimes what is said has no filter, because the person has no way to filter it. Wendy is someone else. So all the different things that we see in this episode of her saying F you and her calling people names and her telling the trainer to move out the way so she could take pictures on her own, and her asking the nail technician if she's stupid, and her being rude and her being demanding and her being aggressive are all signs in some people of frontal lobe damage, which then made me feel bad for laughing at her for doing some of the things that she's doing. DJ Booth, her former co-worker, talks about the day when Wendy fainted on set. Now, DJ Booth wasn't just Wendy's DJ on this show. He was a DJ that worked with Wendy prior to her even being on the Wendy Williams show. And he said that he thought at first that she was playing around, and that he didn't realize that it was as bad as it is until she actually fainted. She talks about her ex-husband, Kevin, and how when meeting him, she was doing certain things like cocaine and all those other things. And then she got to the point where she wanted to settle down, and they got married, and she wanted to have a baby. And in essence, the baby is what made her stop using the cocaine. This woman changed for her son. She then begins to cry, saying how important he is to her. Every time she talks about her son in this, she cries, at least in this first episode. So at this point, Kevin, because we see a picture, and her nephew are in Miami. And she says all of her family is in Miami. While she's saying this, she's vaping. We then have her nephew who says when he was in college, he lived with his aunt. And it got to the point where she would come home from work, she would grab a drink, she would vape, she would go in her room, and she wouldn't come out until the next day. There's so many layers to all this. So we hear about Kevin, her husband, and how he would be out all hours of the night, and her long-term time friend who lived in California would be talking to her, and it'd be 9 o'clock there, which means it was 12 o'clock where Wendy is, and she was still waiting for Kevin because Kevin was out with his mistress. Find out how he bought the mistress a car, and how he would go out to eat, and how all these other things, and how this led to her drinking even more because of how devastated she was. So in 2019, the family wanted to put her in a rehab facility in Miami. They wanted to contact the show, let them know, but the show decided, let's put her in a sober living house here in New York, because at that time, the show mattered more than her sobriety, obviously. So while being in the sober house, her husband got his mistress pregnant, and he ends up telling her, and that was the end of it. I feel like regardless of how long they say he was cheating for 10 years or however long he was cheating, whether she had an agreement with him or not, when that whole situation happened with that baby and it was made public and all those other things, that it broke her. Now here she is in her current state being questioned, and she says that the divorce didn't hurt her. DJ Booth says that the divorce did hurt her. It did break her. That Kevin was a lot of things for her. That Kevin kept her on the right track. That he was the protector. And after Kevin ended up, leaving, that DJ Booth says he became that person. Because now she's in this big home by herself. She's all alone. And I feel like she wasn't ready for it. So you see her in her home in this big, long pool, and she's walking, and she just looks so lonely. So 2020 comes, pandemic. DJ Booth is the only one from the show that she will allow in her house. So he not only at this point is the DJ, but he's the cameraman, and he's holding cue cards and all these other things. To him, that is when it was most apparent that she was showing signs of delay, because they would flash up like somebody from Vanderpump Rules or something, and she was struggling to know who the person was or what she was supposed to say about them. He says she was not quick. She wasn't expressive. She seemed uninterested. She didn't know who some of the people were. And he didn't know whether it was the divorce, whether it was depression, whether it was signs from the alcohol or what. When he was talking, I thought that he cared a lot about her, but even to me, he dropped the ball. So at some point, something happened. One night, Wendy was in her house unresponsive. DJ Booth would go by her house, sometimes just pop up on her and go check on her. At some point, he saw her unresponsive. He found her unresponsive. So rather than calling 911, he calls Wendy's nephew and says she needs to go to the hospital. She needs help really badly. So then the nephew, rather than calling 911, calls Kevin, who was at that time medical proxy, Kevin Jr. And Kevin Jr. was the only one with brains, apparently, and he called 911. So Wendy ended up having to get rushed to the hospital, where she had 3 blood transfusions. We don't know exactly why she had to have 3 blood transfusions. Her nephew feels like, based on what DJ Booth described, that it had to do with alcohol poisoning. So we then see her niece, Alex, who says that her grandmother, who's Wendy's mom, was at Alex's house, and they were watching an episode of the Wendy Williams show, and she noticed right away that something was different about her daughter. And she said that she can see that her daughter wasn't happy, and her daughter isn't well, and that her eyes are dim. And she told Alex, whatever you do, always protect and have your aunt's back. And as Alex is telling this story, I'm looking at her like, so what happened? Because if your aunt is in this situation right now, how are you protecting her and having her back? So she says her aunt and her grandmother were very close, which we know they were. We saw her mom come on the show. We saw her parents come on the show. We saw how excited she got when she spoke about her mother. Wendy has always spoke highly of her parents. Her mom passes, and rather than just stopping the show, Wendy's still doing the show, which then doesn't even give her the proper amount of time to breathe because she had to suck it up and film. So she wraps up her season in June. While she's out, ends up having even more brain fog, all these other issues. So production is trying to contact her and stuff, finds out about some of the things, ends up deciding that we're going to have a guest host for now, for when the show resumes. Her son and nephew hear about some of these problems, end up bringing her to Miami in the fall of 2021. We see clips of her. She looks good. She looks more like herself. We find out from Kevin that, I think was it from Kevin or her nephew? One of them said that she was a vegan, that she was sober. They got her a trainer. She was living a much healthier lifestyle. She was being more like herself. Her nephew says she was doing good. As all of this was going on, at some point, Wendy wasn't answering her phone. People couldn't get in contact with her. And as a result, the show didn't know what to do. So Wendy, who went to go visit her niece, or her niece saw her or something, found out that the show was canceled the same time that we did, because her niece is the one who told her. They then show clips, words on the phone, the TV, saying that they tried to reach the producers of the Wendy Williams show, and they refused to comment. We know that Sherry Shepherd now has a show at that time slot. What's going on? Wendy says that she would like to repair the relationship with her son, Kevin Jr. And the person who's asking her a question is like, what do you mean repair the relationship with your son, Kevin Jr.? She says that there's tension with her son because he hates liquor. I partially feel like Wendy does not want to be with her family. It's beyond the possibility of them taking her money, but I feel like it's because they won't let her do what she wants to do. Because here she is sitting there getting teary-eyed, talking about how her and Kevin have the best time and how when she dies, everything is for him. You guys, when she said that, when I die, everything is for him, I started to cry. Because one thing to me that is clear is that she loves her child, and I just see her, she just looks so sad. Like, she's so sad. She looks so depressed. And anybody who's in this type of state, that stuff isn't good for people when they're sick. Think about it. How many times do you hear about people going into nursing homes and then all of a sudden they just deteriorate? Or how many times do you hear about people who've been married for years, one person passes and then less than a year later, then the other one, who at one point was having no complications, passes too? It's sad. And I feel like Wendy is deteriorating the way she is because she's abusing things. She's vaping. She's doing the alcohol. She has all this stuff going on, and she's lonely. She's lonely. We see Kevin Jr., who has not seen his mom in 8 months. He said that his mom wanted to be closer to family, and that he wanted her to be closer to family because he wants his mom to realize that she's more than just a talk show host, and he feels like the family should be with her. But something went wrong because Wendy was legally removed from the care of not just Kevin, but the family. She's saying, I got so much money and I want it for my son. So what's going on here? I never believed that Kevin Jr. spent all her money. And y'all can let me know what you think down below. I'm going to tell you some things about how I feel. So, in my world, $80,000 for an apartment is a lot. It is. He's in Miami. He's a college student. I don't know when they worked out, what they worked out. $80,000 for an apartment is a lot. $100,000 on Uber Eats is a lot. $120,000 on a birthday party is a lot. But Wendy Williams made more in one episode than some people do in a year. And I think that he spent what his mother allowed him to. I don't feel like he growed up like normal people, like some of us. And I'm not rich. So some of this to me sounds like rich people problems. So why are we like trying to judge the funds that were spent unless we know the totality of them? Because Wendy's not up here saying, at least not yet, that my kids spent up all my money, which makes me wonder, was it just little Kevin spending her money, or were other people spending it as well? Because you want to leak all those things about little Kevin and the Uber and the food and all this other stuff and the party, but y'all can't manage to leak anything else? Who else had access to her account? How is this manager still willing to be around Wendy when she's broke? How is the other lady who was there showing Wendy clothes around her when she's broke? How are these people who are around her getting paid? Was Kevin taking money and giving it to his pappy? Did his dad find out the information to some of Wendy's stuff? What is going on here? Because with her having issues with her memory, I wouldn't be surprised if she was handing out some information to a whole bunch of people. How much money was being taken, funneled out of that account that Wells Fargo took the necessary steps that they did? Okay, so I saw a comment, and this is what it said. Wells Fargo isn't the issue. Wells Fargo saw that there was a change in her spending habits. Her banker alerted the company of the change in the behavior and financial decisions. And also, there were articles and videos that questioned her health status. This caused them to have to bring this to the state. And when they went to court, Wendy switched up on her son and advised the court that she didn't want him involved, despite her recently giving him power of attorney rights. So we're missing something key here if that's what really happened. If Wendy switched up and said, I don't want my son involved, then that would explain why they were so quick to take him off. Since there seemed to be friction between her and the family, they appointed her guardianship. Her other family members who advised they can assist waited too late. And I also can imagine that Wendy may have not been cooperative, which is true. We can tell that Wendy don't like being told no. Wendy keeps talking about how these different family members don't like her using alcohol, so I'm sure she was against it. Now I can see blaming the state and certain laws need to be updated, but Wells Fargo is not to blame. Wells Fargo gets audited on these things. If they aren't alerting the proper powers at B about inconsistent spending habits on this large account and about different people withdrawing from her funds, etc., they could be fined millions. Wells Fargo has already been fined millions for other things that they've done. This situation, I added that part because they have. This situation should show people to put a power of attorney and account executor in place before your account goes into question. This stuff can be done as soon as you open your bank account. This is the type of financial literacy we need to talk about, which I agree, because I don't know anything about that. But what I will say is this: something significant had to be going on with her accounts, more than just him paying rent a couple times a year and Uber charges and a birthday party for them to shut that thing down. I want to know, if any of you know, put it down in the comment section, how much money made them freeze her stuff. And how are these people getting paid, y'all? How? If you have not done so already, please like the video, please comment and subscribe. And I'll be up here maybe in a couple days to talk about the next episode. Until next time.